And so today happens to be Friday, the 19th of February, although today, well, we're doing this is actually Wednesday, the 17th. And I just decided because when we get to the explanation of what's going on, you got to try new things. So here's a new thing. Right now, it's currently snowing very hard on Wednesday. This is the third day of snow in 5 days, and it's not letting up. So we're doing Bubble Friday a little differently now. You're seeing this via the magic of the past and the future recording, but Bubble Friday still stands for what Bubble Friday has stood for since we started it about 8 years ago and since we brought it back about a year ago. So every Friday, I ask you to pull out your cheap stack of bubbles that you can get from Walmart or Target or wherever and blow a few bubbles. Yes, I'm blowing bubbles in the snow. Well, I'm gonna get real close to this one so you can see a little better. It works, believe it or not. Blowing bubbles on a Friday, and that's a way to sort of celebrate the end of a work week. So you can choose your Bubble Friday any day you want to, but the end of a week where you've successfully navigated through 5 days, 10 days, 6 days, whatever your on-off schedule is of being there. So congratulations for surviving your work week or just about to survive your work week with your Bubble Friday. Blow out that stress and strife. You can also do the adult thing, which I'll probably be doing once I'm done out in the snow because this is pretty silly. And you can take in bubbles. That means imbibe bubbles. You can ingest bubbles. You can take a nice beverage that is either bubbly or not so bubbly and enjoy that as your way to de-stress, to release the stress preparing for your weekend. Or you do a really simple thing by taking a deep breath in and letting it go, and you have simply right then, right there, blown away the stress and strife in a nice, simple manner that doesn't have to worry about getting a ticket for DUI and doesn't have to worry about looking silly carrying bubbles around. But I do suggest if you want to do something with that, what is here. Now, Bubble Friday is now going to be pre-recorded, and we'll get to that in a moment. But we're also going to basically follow up the reminder to release the stress of the weekend with three things, or to do with gloves on. Three things going forward. That's going to be the big format. So thing number one is the origin of Bubble Friday. And so I'll not go so deep into the origins going forward because I'll have some write up on that and it's not so much necessary for the point of it. As I said, about 8 years ago, I was working for a radio station group and we were dealing with some pretty heavy stuff. Actually, broadcasting radio still dealing with heavy stuff, but it was different heavy stuff back then than it is now, and not quite heavy snow stuff you're seeing right now. So I was just sitting with a coworker in her studio, in between one of her sets, and she was just kind of going over stuff, and she was just kind of like, "Man, we need a way to just kind of blow off some steam and just kind of chill out." Ironically, the next day, I came back with some pictures of my little one, who was really little at the time, who was sitting out on the step blowing bubbles. She wanted to blow bubbles outside, so she came out here in this yard, which was more green then, blowing bubbles. Posted some on Facebook, and the coworker was like, "That's what we're going to do. We're blowing bubbles. Bring some bubbles on Friday." And literally, Bubble Friday was born from going out into the outdoor smoking break area and just a bunch of adults blowing bubbles at each other, looking like really goofy kids like stuff, having fun and blowing off some steam. It was meant to be cheap. It was meant to be silly. It was meant to be something that was more inside jokish. And as people actually came and joined in, visiting in the radio station, they joined into it. We put some pictures on Facebook, and we all had people reaching out about it. And it became sort of a thing for a little while, and then it went away. About a year ago, so literally about a year or so ago, when I started working a brand new job after being laid off for a year at said radio station, I was looking to do more live interaction things, and I was trying to find ways to do that. And essentially, with my old schedule having long swaths of time where I can sit and record stuff, and my new schedule being a little more or less interrupted at all points in time, the key part of trying to do something live was finding that right spot. And the one spot that I found that no one seemed to really bother me at was right before the shop opened at 8:30. And so with that, I had a Bubble Friday thing kind of already built in, and actually had a friend a few weeks beforehand ask about doing Bubble Fridays again, people bringing it back. So I brought it back in this recorded form, actually in the live form that went live on Facebook and YouTube. And it was the blowing the bubbles part, and it turned into a way for me to do some commentary and do some trying to be motivational, but also doing some things about what's going on in the world. So now that is the story, the history, part one and part two, how it came about. We're going to wrap up the history part with what it is going forward, and it will be recorded. It will be set aside a few days or so beforehand, because as time went on, I'm at the same job only a year later, but the demands and the timing things happen, so that now I'm actually bothered well before I even roll into my parking lot in the morning. So no complaints. I'm very happy to have employment. I'm very great to be working where I'm working, but the timing of live stuff doesn't work out so well. And the environment, even though it's nice and pristine pretty now, normally it's not this white and pottery, which is a bad thing. And normally there are actual cars and things going wrong and people in the neighborhood, which is a better thing. And so the outside here looks pretty today. So that's what we're doing this right now. Inside the house, not so much. There'll be other places I can find to go around. And my office wasn't really that great place either, but it was there, and it was about getting it done. So finding a good place to make a home recording place will be going forward. The story and the changing of Bubble Friday. That's all the part one, the number one thing to talk about. So how it got to be, how it's going forward, and you'll see it progress more or less. Less about the background and more about progression going forward. Number two. One thing I have learned in the 2020 year pandemic, 2019 year being unemployed, and so far 2021, which is going swimmingly well, as you can see, is that you have to be prepared for the unexpected and for change and for dealing with things that make absolutely no sense in the moment except for survival. If this were back in prehistoric days and there were saber-toothed tigers chasing to us, trying to understand their motivations is pretty silly, because their motivations are pretty simple. They're hungry and we're food. So trying to negotiate with their motivations, them being less hungry and not eating us as food, makes no sense. So you survive till the next fight, survive till the next battle, survive till the next time you get a chance to, be saber-toothed tiger less. And that's what we're doing right now by recording this Bubble Friday ahead of time, number one, and in the snow, the very heavy snow. This is the third day of good snow in about 4 days, maybe 4.5 days, if you will. And this is not snow that's supposed to be coming down in Arkansas. This is snow from a few states up north that somehow they forgot about and let it drop here. I heard in the news today that 45 of the 48 contiguous states here in the middle states had snow in them, other than Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina, this was taken a day or so ago, and the snow has probably moved on to them as well. But we're not letting a storm that is literally blocking everybody in my neighborhood from getting out of the neighborhood stop us from getting this thing done. We're going to try new things in very unorthodox ways. And you, out there, need to remember, we had a very crazy year collectively in 2020. 2021 is pretty much off to a roaringly bad start in some cases as well. But you still are not off the hook for going forward, moving ahead, working to survive, and doing new things, and sometimes extremely crazy, silly things like blow bubbles in the snow. It doesn't seem to make any sense, but I got something called Bubble Friday. I needed bubbles. I'm recording for Friday. It all worked itself out. And the third thing, you don't ask, you don't get. So going forward, the third thing in this thing will be me asking for something. And it is what it is, especially since I can't do the quick promotion of what's going on. I can't really be so much live as in what's going on, although this will probably still be happening on Friday. Can't really be in the kind of the matter of vein of just live action, live talking. So going forward, I am really needing, I am begging you for support and things. And you don't have to support every single thing, but basically every single week as my third thing, I'm going to wrap up with something that I'm looking for to be promoted for, something I'm looking for you to look into, something I'm looking for more hands on, something I'm looking for sometimes you to kind of pay a little dinero on. This week won't cost you very much other than time, and it will be time I believe is well spent and time that we actually get more of, if you will. I have a newsletter called 8 Things to Talk About that comes out about 6 o'clock every morning, Monday through Friday. It's attached to the podcast I've been doing for 8 years as well, about 8 years as well. For This Is Conversation, the podcast is now called Weekly Wrap Up, and it is a wrap up of news stories, and it uses the 8 Things to Talk About newsletter to help it build itself up. I'm in a massive push to make this thing work because I got a good formula, everything's great, just make it all kind of come together. So you're going to see some information in the video description on how to sign up for the newsletter. And it comes out every single morning, about 6 o'clock in the morning, and it offers up 8 news stories because of literally my time able to put it together and the construction time I have to get it done. It's a little wordy, but it's going to give you the 8 top stories from the past day or so that people would be talking about if you were to get out into the neighborhood or actually even go to work and have a water cooler to talk around. But these are stories that are called the most, I'm in Snell, so I'm slipping, most conversational. I call the most conversational stories around the world. We offer up the story links all throughout the day via social media, and we let people's interaction tell us what the top stories are. So sometimes it's a real top story, sometimes it's a real important story, sometimes they're fringy stories, and essentially anytime I put in Harry and Meghan, they always make it. They're basically always there. And so I want you to subscribe to the newsletter and open it. Subscribe to the newsletter and open it. Check it out. It's called 8 Things to Talk About. Subscribe to the newsletter. It won't cost you a thing, and the more subscriptions I have will help my numbers. The more opens I have help my numbers. And there's even some affiliate links inside there that if you want to click those buttons and buy from those folks, it also helps me as well. That costs you nothing extra. It doesn't cost you anything extra in the buy. We just get a little bit off affiliate links for a couple pennies for you buy it through our link. It's that simple. So the third thing is 8 Things to Talk About, the newsletter, the daily newsletter. It gives you 8 things, Monday through Friday daily, 8 things to talk about, chat about, things that are really big stories, really conversational. And a lot of those stories are ones that you don't really get to see if you're like me and have CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News on all day, because they are covering the same things over and over because their audiences changes. But these are some of the stories that get left off in the fringe. They're essentially middle to back page newspaper stories, middle to back page website stories, and you'll want to check them out. You'll find yourself that much more knowledgeable, and it'll help me out a lot. Thing number 3. So, as I always end these things up, congratulations, because you accomplished 2 things. Number 1, the purpose of being here, the bubbles on Friday. You survived the last work week, or about to survive the last work week, and preparing yourself for a time to take some time off. The second thing is, today at least, or maybe tomorrow, maybe even further down the line, but as we record this on the 17th, we play it back on the 19th, somewhere along the lines, you woke up. You had the ability to open your eyes, blink a couple times, sit up, get out of bed. You also had the ability and technology near you or someone with it to watch a video or listen to me in the background go on for about 15 minutes, blowing bubbles, begging for subscribers to the newsletter, and talking about standing in the snow being a very new thing. So with that, you've already accomplished 2 awesome things today, and about to accomplish another one about getting through the week. You're on task to do something awesome today. We see that bubbles don't last very long in the jar outside in the cold. So closing out with a good bubble is not going to happen. did it. Sometimes it takes a little extra effort. And I'm going to get above it so they blow right into the camera.